Fights podcast. I'm your host, Mace.
And I'm your co-host, Proteus.
All right. So, I wanted to start off this episode actually by just addressing the audience and saying one of our hopes for this channel is that we will get an opportunity to kind of build a community here. We want to hear what you have to say. So please comment. And if you do, there's a good chance that we'll be bringing up a lot of comments in future episodes and actually addressing them in the podcast itself. So it gives you an opportunity to actually hear back from us. And if we don't have time to talk directly to your comment, speak directly to your comment in the show, we'll still make an effort to respond to as many comments as possible. So please leave your comments, like, and subscribe so that you can hear our responses. So we're going to go ahead and just get into it. So Proteus, what's our first news story for today?
Yeah, so one of the major topics I'm sure many have seen over the last couple weeks has been about Bungie and what's going on over at that studio. I know a lot of information has come out this month, which it's been unfortunate news because it's mainly been about I think it was 220 layoffs that they had, which was pretty massive because I know that Bungie had kind of bulked up over the last several years to support Destiny 2. And after their acquisition by Sony, I thought, there would be a lot of investment from Sony into Bungie, for their future projects and for Destiny as a whole. But it seems like that is not the case. And it's especially sad for those developers. It came at a time because the final shape that just released, I believe, probably in the last 2 months.
I think it was. It was very recently.
Yeah, okay. It was back on June 4th is when the final shape came out. And while that, there was a lot of mixed things about the content there. That's beside the point because
I mean,
the reports,
it's Destiny, right? It's always mixed.
Yeah, and Destiny, it's something it was somewhat near and dear to my heart because I thought it was a major deal, when it first came out way back on PS4 and Xbox One. So it was something that I played the original a lot, and then we played Destiny 2 quite a bit back in the day, several years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. The same here. So my introduction to Destiny was me and my college roommates played it a lot. Both of my college roommates and bought their TVs and their first Xbox One while we were going to college, and one of the first games they got was Destiny, and we would literally just take turns logging into our accounts and running different strikes together and doing all of the daily content, so it was really fun. And I got into Destiny 2 right as soon as it released, and on release I didn't really enjoy it, but then later on got back into it. I have several hundred hours into it. It wasn't released in a great state.
No, it became something a lot better, and honestly, I think a lot of it goes back to the fact that Bungie had partnered originally with Activision on it. So,
oh yeah, sure.
There was a whole lot of that live service DNA that was built into it. And obviously, Destiny was almost like a kind of MMO light. How it was originally structured and how Activision wanted them to build the game. But the one thing I know that we've talked about in the past is how Destiny. Bungie as a studio is very talented in the mechanics of their games and how the game felt to play. Yeah, I think Destiny was one of the easiest shooters to get into where it felt good to play.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think Destiny 2 to me is a benchmark. Benchmark may not be the right word, but it is the standard, I think, for excellent gunplay.
Yeah, and it just continues on because obviously, Bungie made the original Halo games, and those going back to those, they still feel great to play, even like the
Oh yeah,
older,
sure.
like the oldest games. Like we've played some of the remakes, obviously, and some of the older ones, but yeah. So Bungie, I mean, it's kind of a sad state that after releasing the final shape, which a lot of people had been waiting for quite a while, and I don't remember. Did it get delayed? Do you know if it got delayed
I
um,
don't.
for
I don't know.
release? Because it just felt like it was in stasis, or it was just taking a while to come out, and so I think that it
Oh, I
was
mean,
kind
they
of.
had last year. They had another DLC that released, right?
I believe they did. What was it? I thought it was smaller
It
though.
it reviewed very poorly.
What was it? The light was it the Lightfall, or was that older?
Yes,
Lightfall?
Lightfall is what
Is
it
that the right
was.
one?
That might be older though. Now that I'm
Yeah,
thinking of it.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, because that one was. I don't know that one. So they did no light. You're right. It was Lightfall. Year 6,
Yeah,
Lightfall,
light.
and Year
Yes,
Seven's Final Shape. And great. We're on Year 7 of Destiny 2, which kind of mind-boggling. Um,
wild. It's wild.
yeah, because we did. I mean, I remember playing Year 2 Forsaken, and I think I got Shadowkeep, and then I think I fell off. I think all of us kind of fell off either right after that. Or you
So
might have kept playing. I can't remember.
I
Right.
played right up until I think it was the Witch Queen.
Okay, so you kept playing. Yeah, so we did Shadowkeep, and then Beyond Light was after that, followed by the Witch Queen. So,
Wait,
but
Beyond Light was after Witch Queen.
no, it was before. It says
Before, yes. Okay,
yeah,
so
Year 4. Yeah,
I
Beyond Light.
dropped off right before Queen
Okay.
came out.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
yeah. It's I don't know. It's a great like I said. It feels great to play. I think that Destiny had so much unrealized potential in what it could be, and that they kept
Sure.
like the way it was built was kind of held back because of the limitations of the prior gen of consoles. Because they talked about that, like when they released it on PS4 and Xbox One, and that they built the environment smaller, they built it into like bite-sized chunks because of how the old consoles could handle it. And while it was great, and I think like the way they built it was, obviously limited by that, they did a great job with it. I think that they kind of kept it held back by that older gen for a long time. And I don't know, I feel like there was a lot of unrealized potential for Destiny. And I was hoping that, they would release up an actual, like Destiny 3, or just drop the numbering and just say like the new
Oh,
Destiny.
yeah,
So,
sure. Well, I mean, they
yeah.
kind of ran into this big issue, right, where the game was bloating out of control.
Hmm.
They had so many DLCs, they had so much different content that was going on that they ended up just shuttering a bunch of it, like literally
That,
removing it
yeah,
from the game
I
because it
can't.
was
That
too big. And
well,
I
they say
understand
that.
why
I
they
get
did
it.
it. Well,
Yeah,
okay, but here's the thing. I kind of agree with them because
yeah.
as a new player coming in, that
Hmm.
is so overwhelming. The amount that you had to learn just coming in, I think, was turning off a lot of new players where it was just not even worth
Yeah,
it.
the problem with that, I do understand your perspective on it. I just think like taking the main story, like that's the thing. They shuttered like the core
Oh, yeah,
Destiny 2 story,
the story
and
bits that they
I
removed,
think
I think really
they
hurt.
I think what they could have done, I mean, this was while they were under the Activision, not quite umbrella, but they were working with Activision. They could have done what Call of Duty's been doing for the last several years. Those games are massive. They're over 100 and 150 gig now.
Yeah, they're
Um,
gigantic.
but they allow you to download what you want, like what components. So if they didn't want
That's
to,
true. I
like
mean,
they could have
Master
piecemealed
Chief
it out.
Collection does the same thing, right? You
Yeah,
can
and they could have
download
said
each campaign individually and each
exactly. And
multiplayer
so
individually.
yeah, and I feel like they could have done something like you could have the core Destiny storyline, the main one that's, so I don't know how many gigs or whatever, and have that cordoned off. Like, that doesn't have to be the one you download, but if you really want to go back and play that story, just have it there and then be
Sure.
able to play it. And I know they did say, "Oh, well, there's something about the servers and all that," but they could have
That's
easily
usually
cut
just
it off.
yeah.
Yeah, it's an excuse that a lot of companies
I
use. I
mean,
think
it is expensive.
it
Like
is
I can tell
expensive.
you, working in tech, that um,
Uh,
if like disk space isn't free, it's not.
yeah,
It's very expensive. And
yeah,
so hosting a lot of stuff on a server, it can be very costly.
yeah. That's understandable too. But I think they could have done, yeah, they could have done better about that. Destiny, yeah, at this point, like, even if I wanted to go back, I wouldn't, because it's so,
Mm,
I don't know, like,
yeah.
it's so hard to get into the new seasons, and like just how the power scaling and
Yes.
everything, like that piece, I was not a fan of that, and I think a lot of other players obviously weren't, and so
Yep.
I feel like they've also, so with Bungie, they've been having a lot of players fall off because, we both felt the grind. Like, you're playing the same
You
strike
just
missions
feel
over.
like you're doing all this stuff.
You're on the
And then it
treadmill.
doesn't
Yeah,
even matter in the end
yeah.
because the
'Cause
new season
exactly,
starts and everything that you did is irrelevant. That was
exactly.
actually why I quit.
Ugh.
That was
Yeah,
why I
because
quit because I hit max light level one
yeah,
season and I had done a bunch of raids and I was doing all this stuff and then the new season started and I was like, ugh, I got to do all of this work just to be able to do raids again. I got to do all of this work to be able to, do dungeons and I was just done at that point because the things
yeah,
that I had didn't feel good to use anymore. And
exactly.
yeah, it
That
just,
piece that bothered
yeah,
me a lot, especially like the last year that when we'd played a lot that year. I'd taken part in a lot of the Iron Banner events because I really love the PvP. Like, the
yeah, sure.
PvP, when it
It's
was
funny you
balanced,
say that because from what I
yeah,
understand, the PvP is considered one of the weak points.
yeah, and
That it's like
right now it's
extremely unbalanced.
it's extremely unbalanced now. Especially they
Oh
had better
yeah.
scaling early on, but like taking part in like those special Iron Banner events, and you get the cool,
Oh
sets of
yeah, the
armor,
Iron
like the
Banner
really
is
cool sets of
rough.
armor. And then when I grinded so hard to get like the full sets for the hunter and the full set for like the
Mhm.
warlock and for the titan and stuff. And then, to be like you said, when the new expansion comes out, it's like, okay, all that armor and gear, that sucks. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's useless, and you either have to, I think, transmog or something, or whatever, like, you could use the how it looked, but the original set of armor is useless. And so
Yeah, sure, sure.
I just like that feeling of like you put in all the time and it's good for a little bit and then it's not at all. And so
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
that
I have
yeah.
something else to say about
Oh yeah, sure.
this. Okay, let's talk about the layoffs again.
Oh yeah.
So, the layoffs, I think it was like 220 people
Yeah,
approximately
220 to
that
yeah.
were laid off.
Hmm.
And then there was 150 that were absorbed into
Yes.
um place into not PlayStation,
Into
Sony.
Sony, I mean Sony Interactive Entertainment. Yeah.
Yes. So I think this is interesting, and this is something that I want to point out because most news sources that I've seen covering this will say things like, "Oh, over 300 people lost their jobs." That's crap. Okay,
Yeah.
that's crap. The 150 people who are moved to Sony, that should be considered a win
Yeah, because
because
they kept them
somebody,
on, like, yeah.
there was some executive that was probably bending over backwards trying to facilitate that transition for them.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
for
I think
sure.
they do deserve credit for that, for saving those jobs.
Yeah, and it's for a lot of the outlets to report that, oh, 300 and something people lost their jobs. It's like, well, that's not
Yeah,
accurate. And
it's clickbait, is what it
yeah,
is. I mean,
and I think the interesting thing behind it, like you said, yeah, there was probably an executive that was trying to keep them. Um, I think it was interesting. I did look up several different articles, and so one of the things that was reported, was that, Bungie. So the final shape came out 2 months ago. They were already going to do these layoffs, whether or not the final
Really?
shape, was
Yeah.
successful or not.
Yeah, I
And
mean, layoffs are kind of the natural way of
yeah, and I
things.
think Sony finally um, decided to rein them in, like because they were. I mean, Sony, they're at a weird point, and I after what is it? Their last executive, what was it? Jim Ryan, right? He, he retired or announced his retirement. I think he's either left or leaving this year with some like
Okay, sure.
with stuff. So this was all under him. Like this, that's the thing. Sony did the whole live service push and
Right. Okay, I see what you're talking
invested
about.
a lot, and that's why they bought Bungie. Like Bungie was, they thought was like the key because Destiny 2 had been going. Like, yeah, we're on year 7
Yeah,
of
it
Destiny
had
2.
been going so strong for a long time. And honestly, at the time when they bought it, they were still
Yes.
they were still going pretty strong. Because I think they
Yeah.
didn't they purchase them like right after the Witch Queen.
It was in
It was either right
2000,
after or
or no,
right
sorry,
before.
2022 is when it, I believe, is that right? They acquired Bungie in 2022 for $3.6 billion, which
Yeesh.
that that still blows my mind. I cannot believe that they paid that much for Bungie. Like, I
Ah, it's
think that
crazy.
they'll probably go down as one of the worst deals in video game history for a studio.
Yeah.
Um, After which, I mean, before that, Sony probably got one of the best like deals when they bought Naughty Dog, or not? Was it Naughty Dog? Or no, it was Insomniac. I think
Oh,
they, I
yes. I
think that
think
was in the
that was a steal for them.
low, low millions. Like, I think less than 100 million. I'd have to look it up, but I know it was a fraction. And they, I believe, have already made so much money with like the Spider-Man games and the Ratchet games.
I mean,
After,
the Spider-Man games are probably one of their best-selling
yeah, and then to go
products.
get Bungie for 3.6 billion, and that's been, 2 years ago.
Yeah,
There
I
and
think the mentality was I think they thought they could bring back the glory days of Destiny,
yeah,
and I think that's foolish because that's
yeah,
not how
I
it works. That's not how it works. It never
yeah,
is, okay? And I think so, we were talking earlier about Destiny and what it
hmm
could have been, and so many people are talking about, oh, they're squandering Destiny. I think people are just done with it. Like, it's
yeah. It's
seven
been going for a
years
long time.
old.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
seven
and
years
even
old.
before
That
that,
is
so it's
old for a
Destiny
game.
2, and so 7 years. So that was 2017 when it launched. About
Yeah, that's
and
true. That's Destiny 2, and then
that's
Destiny
Destiny
1
2,
was so
2014,
similar.
about 2013, 2014. Because I remember I actually met a couple of the original Bungie devs at a GameStop Expo
Ah,
show,
okay,
and
cool.
I played a demo of Destiny before it was officially launched, which was pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah. Anyways, but that means it's been a decade. Like, it's been over a decade or so
Yeah,
since
that
Destiny's
that
been around.
franchise is getting long in the tooth.
Yeah, and unless they do something new, and I don't know, like Sony trying to just like, okay, we'll buy Bungie. They have live service knowledge. We
Yes.
will, use that or expand on it, but it just didn't seem like they really went anywhere. And I know one of the articles, they said that there was Stephen Totillo, who is a pretty famous games journalist. He had talked to them, and his source said that the leadership at Bungie kind of overstated things on the financial side to
Oh,
Sony, and so they
yeah,
were
that doesn't
kind of
surprise me.
over promising and definitely under delivering on that piece. And
Sure.
so it's just kind of crazy that they got. I mean, I get it's been 2 years, so it's like they got through the last 2 years, and I think it finally came home, to roost that what they said wasn't exactly all rosy for them.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
which is unfortunate because, like, that's over 200 people lost their jobs.
Yep. And I think that
So,
is really so, when we talk about this story
yeah,
is I think it is evidence that Destiny is reaching its what's the word?
The like later
It's
stages of its
yeah,
life.
it's in
It's
the latter stages of its life for sure.
yeah,
It's
and
it's had its day in the sun, and I don't think that it's going to hold on too much longer. At least it's not, it's not
not
what it was, right?
yeah, not in its current form. Unless they launch a new Destiny that has some other like I don't know, like I was saying,
Yeah,
like
I
the
don't even know.
potential.
I think that is such a big gamble.
It would, yeah, it would totally be a big gamble because of how much people have invested, and that's the problem with live service games. Is like once you have people
You
that have
can't really
invested,
sequel them very
yeah,
easily.
the amount of time and energy and money that they've poured into this game, it's like
Hmm.
what do you? It's like it's something like WoW. Like one of our close friends has been playing that since it came out, and his
Yes.
account has everything. Like he's been keeping everything over the years has been just
Yeah.
compiled and stuck to that account. Whereas other games, that was a big deal with Destiny versus Destiny 2. Is that people were pretty like when Destiny 2 was coming out, people were like, "What do you mean you're making a sequel? What about all my stuff?" And
Yep.
so it was a big. I remember it was a big deal back
See, but
then. A
I
lot of people
think,
don't remember that.
I don't know. I think that might be the way to go with that kind of thing. I
Yeah.
think, I don't know. I don't know if live service has as much of a future as a lot of the games industry thinks. I
Well,
look at
yeah.
another game that is similar in terms
Okay.
of it is kind of a live service, but it's not really, and that's Forza Horizon. It's not a
Yeah.
live service. It's like a biannual release.
Yeah,
But
and it has like online
they
stuff that you can do, right?
uh-huh.
Yeah,
And
like
they
it.
they do a lot of DLC. They do a lot of
Yeah,
DLC over the life of each game. They do a lot of seasonal content. It is treated very much like a live service,
but it isn't
but
like
there's
it's
always an
not like.
expectation that there's going to be a sequel.
And Forza Horizon, the most recent was it five? Was five the most recent? Or
5 was the most recent. Yep.
okay, so with that, I had a quite because you played a lot more. I only played. I
Yeah,
think
I've
I
played
played Horizon 1 and 2 like a long time
three,
ago.
3, 4, and 5. I've put
A lot of time into
over
it.
yeah, well over 100 hours into each one,
With the
probably like two
yeah,
or 300
so
hours.
with those, could was there an option to play offline, like without the live
Yes.
service elements? Okay, I was curious about
There
that.
yeah, there's definitely. So I don't remember which game. I think it was with 3 they introduced like the shared world where like if you were driving around the open world, you could see other players and you could like
Yeah,
just street race them or whatever. And that was a really cool thing. But you could always turn that off.
yeah,
You still have the seasonal content that's gonna be there.
hmm
You can't turn that off, but I don't know why you would want to. It's just kind of there in the background. It's more of
yeah,
if you do these things, you get these rewards, and oh, there's these limited time races that rotate from week to week and
yeah.
month to month, that kind of thing.
I think, yeah, I think that
Anyway,
type of model could be cool for something like Destiny.
yeah,
I think if
I
they,
think
I
that's a
if
better
Bungie,
model because it keeps people more excited. Where Bungie, what they're doing is they're just adding to the same game.
hmm
So they aren't able to make as drastic of changes from one to the next because they have to still take into consideration everything that's already there.
yeah, everything that's come before, like, yeah, that's the problem when you have a game that's been going for 7+ years and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
everything keeps adding and adding, and then like you said earlier, it's hard for people to get into. Like it's really hard for newcomers to get into Destiny.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, and I think before we close off on this
Yeah,
one thing
absolutely.
was that the I guess some of the other sources were saying that like inside the even though like that was a lot of people 220. it wasn't. I don't think all of them were working on just Destiny.
Oh
They
no, they
had some
weren't.
other
No.
projects that were going. And one of
Yeah, a
them,
lot of them were related to other projects.
yes, and one key one that Sony was trying to tout was the Marathon game,
Marathon.
the
Yeah.
extraction shooter, another live kind of semi live
Another, we're getting
service.
into this trend way too late.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we're gonna go make an extraction shooter years after the most successful extraction shooters have already, been on the
Yep.
ground, already doing it. And so I am very curious now as to what's gonna happen with Marathon
Hmm.
because some people say that it's still a big focus. Others are saying that after
It's
the
like
layoffs,
completely
it's like,
dead. Yeah, I've
yeah,
heard
and
both.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do now with like you said there was like over 100 people, some of that talent that was kind of shuffled off to other Sony studios for
Yep.
support and things like that. But it will be interesting to see what Bungie ends up doing in the next year or two, or what's going on, like what their
Well, and here's
development
the
priorities
question:
go to.
is Marathon worth continuing to pursue, or is it just sunk cost at this point?
I don't know. Yeah. At this point, I don't know. It's similar to what we talked about last episode. With Concord, that they developed this
That's
another
yeah.
trend chasing shooter, live service shooter that is years past when it probably should have been released. So like, I don't know.
That one
Like
is sunk
Sony,
cost.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and Sony, I do not know what they're doing. Like, I cannot comprehend the success that they had in the PS4 era, that they like destroyed Xbox. They had tons of single player games.
Hmm.
They got into
Well,
PS5
okay.
with like,
I don't
yeah.
remember. I don't remember exactly, but I believe at one point Xbox was in the lead during the last generation. No, 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 no.
Oh,
I'm getting
no,
mixed up.
no.
That was the
No.
PlayStation 3,
2,
Xbox
3 and
360.
360. Yeah, they were in the lead almost the
360 was
entire
actually
generation.
destroying PlayStation until they
Oh
finally
yeah.
figured out their pricing and everything.
Yes, until I think the slim model PlayStation 3,
Yeah, yeah.
that they got the cost down enough, and then they started putting out a lot of games. But even then, like lifetime sales, I think the 360 still was more than the PS3
Yeah,
for most of
absolutely.
the generation. But in the PS4 generation, like Xbox fumbled that, and then Sony just took that and ran with it, and they released all those hits. They released Horizon, God of War, and then they what was that the end of the generation they had Ghost of Tsushima, things
Yeah.
like that, and then those were all very big hits in single player games, and then to come out with like the PS5 and to focus on it like just as much as the PS4, and then just have it sold out for years basically for the
Yeah.
first year or two, and now you're like, what are they doing? Like they're doing this, but in the background they're buying Bungie for 3.6 billion.
It's just confusing. It's
Yeah,
confusing.
I
And it's
really
funny
hope.
because everybody's talking about how confusing Xbox's strategy is, but I think that Xbox's strategy
I
is working for them much
I was
better.
gonna say it's pretty straightforward. They wanted to do Netflix for games, and
Yes,
that's what they've been trying to do for the last 4 years.
and it's
And
succeeding.
yeah, their subscription numbers I think are pretty good. Their hardware numbers are pretty abysmal compared to
Oh yeah, the
PlayStation.
hardware numbers are getting worse all the
But
time. But that's
to be
because
fair, Game
I
Pass you
don't
can
think they
stream it.
even want to be in. I don't think they've
Yeah,
outright said it because they don't want people to stop buying the consoles, right? Because
yeah,
I mean, they're still putting them on shelves, right?
yeah.
But I don't think they want to be in the hardware business. They want to be essentially a publisher and a distributor.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that seems to be pretty apparent over the last several years with the acquiring
Yeah.
of so many developers.
That's why
Uh,
when a lot of times I'll be watching a video and they'll say, "Oh, uh, Microsoft's strategy is so confusing." I'm like, "It's not confusing at all. They don't want to produce hardware because hardware introduces overhead. It introduces risk. They don't want
yeah,
that risk. So, what are they doing? They are selling digital content.
exactly. And you don't, yeah, if you
because you're
let
not
people,
actually selling anything that has to be produced
yeah, like you just have to have like they have all these PC
other than the
gamers that can just do
technology,
Game Pass.
of
Yeah,
course.
Game
Yeah.
Pass on PC. You can do it on certain smart TVs. You can do the Game Pass streaming on.
Yep.
People have gotten it to work on Steam Deck and other portable PC
Yep.
handhelds, and it's just like for them, they're like, yeah, if somebody, I can get somebody to subscribe and just have a constant source of income like every month, like they're
Hmm.
it's not confusing at all. Like they really want to try, like I said, they want to be the Netflix of gaming, and so
Yeah, of course.
Sony needs to figure it out. So I
They
think
really
that's,
do.
with all the stuff with Bungie, I feel bad for the developers, but also like Sony should have had more foresight on what was going on. They should have had, they should have had more meetings with the leadership there. I mean, yeah, it I don't know how they could have let all this stuff go and not done anything, especially with the huge investment that they had. So
Yep.
yeah,
All
it's
right.
sad,
Well,
but yeah. Anyways,
let's talk about our other story.
yeah,
So, as many people will know, recently a very beloved studio was shuttered after releasing a critically acclaimed game. That would be Tango Gameworks. This is very recent, right? So, I mean, within the past
yeah,
month, I believe, they were completely shut down. And
yeah. But
they
they
had
they
just released HiFi Rush, which was a huge critical success.
critical. Yeah, it was
I
big
don't,
everywhere.
I'm not sure financially how successful it was, but here's the thing too, like bringing it back to Microsoft, I think it's really hard to judge
Hmm.
those things when you move most of your media through a subscription service,
Yeah, that's one of the
right?
pieces that
Well, yeah,
Hi-Fi
people aren't
Rush
buying it
was.
because
It was a Game
it's
Pass Day
free.
One release. Yeah,
It's
and
not free. It's
I
on a subscription service.
yeah, I played it though. That's the thing. I played it on Game Pass
Yeah.
when it came out, and I was pretty excited about it. I mean, because we both have talked about this in the past, but
Hmm.
like there aren't games like that anymore. Like that was
It
it
was
was.
totally unique. It was just anymore, I think it's a great game. I played
Yeah.
it this year, and just the story is so good. The presentation, the music in it. Obviously, I mean it's a rhythm game, so that would
Hmm.
be important. But I mean the licensed tracks that they chose were perfect. They were
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, for
There's
each of the
a
boss fights and the levels and
Oh yeah,
stuff.
there's a
Yeah.
level that uses a what is it? The Prodigy song. It's so good. It gave me goosebumps. It was a song I listened to when I was a kid, so
Yeah.
yeah, I already loved the song, and so when it came on, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and when you're in
Uh,
those levels, just and you're on beat and you're just with the
oh,
music and it's like the combat's
Well,
just
and then the
flowing.
other
It's
thing
just
about it is that it has this thing where, you've got all of these different ways of doing combos that are all so flashy, and then the special moves. For me, it wasn't just about playing the game, about being on beat or anything, or like the
Mhm.
technical difficulty. It was about how can I make this fight as cool as possible?
Right. You're trying to pull off some really cool move, like some of the flashier moves and
Yep.
combos, and switching in the support characters and stuff, and using them to combo. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
Anyway,
yeah, it's a great game. Sadly, it's still on my backlog, so
yeah, yeah.
I need to finish. I'm probably halfway or more through it,
Yeah.
honestly. Yeah, but I just need to go back and finish it. But I also, like, it was on Game Pass, and so that was a piece that I was like, oh man, I don't own this game, but I want to
Oh,
like own
yeah.
it. And then it ended up
I think
that
it's another thing that happens with Game Pass games, right? Is that
yeah,
when you know you have access to it, sometimes it kind of gets pushed off, and it's like, I didn't spend money on it, so I kind
yeah,
of want to play the games that or maybe I'm
that,
wrong. Maybe it's the
no, that is.
opposite.
I think that's part of it, and having it where it's like it's kind of temporary. It's like if I don't subscribe, then it's not my game, and I won't be able to play that save anymore until I
Yeah,
buy
yeah.
it. Which, luckily, I did get a copy through
That's actually one of the
the
reasons
humble
why I
choice. Yeah.
dropped why I
Oh yeah.
dropped Game Pass was because I was like, okay, so I'm gonna play this game, I'm gonna get all this save progress, and then if I ever want to return to it, I'm gonna have to buy it outright because it's not gonna be on this service forever.
Yeah, and that's part of the
Um,
Game Pass model is that they do want if you love a game enough to buy it, which I what was it year before last? I started playing Yakuza 0 on Game Pass,
oh yeah.
and I got deep into it, and I was like, I gotta finish this. So when the next time the game went up for sale, I was like snagging a copy, and so I bought it and then finished it. And that's the thing; it did
Nice.
fall off. The collection. I mean, they were on for
While
a
you
long
were
time.
in progress.
Yeah, I think and that's why I bought it before it fell off just to make sure that I would have access to it.
Okay, we're getting off
Um,
topic though.
anyways, so yeah, yeah. So
So
Tango Gameworks.
yeah, Tango Gameworks. They also did The Evil Within, which I don't know that that one was super critically well received. I know that a lot of people played it.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed it. Um, I think it was. It depends on who you're talking to. Some people didn't like it as much. Some people loved it, and I think that really
Yeah.
has to do with the fact that it was Shinji Mikami, the creator of Resident Evil, who was involved in it, and so
Hmm.
people were going into it thinking, "Oh, it's Resident Evil, just
But it
not
wasn't,
Resident
right?
Evil." But it's not.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
survival horror. It leans a little bit more on the action side, but yeah. Anywho, so
Did you play both Evil Within games?
yes, yeah, I
Okay.
did.
Yeah. I thought you had. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I liked
Yeah.
both of them. They're hugely different titles, but
Yeah.
so
And
Tango
then
Games Works has made some great games,
yeah.
and The Evil Within 2 was not directed by Shinji Mikami.
Oh, really? I didn't realize
Um,
that.
Neither was Hi-Fi Rush. Both of them
Did
were
he?
directed by it's an American director, I believe.
John Johannes
Yes, yes, yes. John
or Johannes? I
Johannes.
don't know. Or, yeah.
Johannes. John.
Johannes? I don't know. Johannes.
Anyway, the point is he was the one who directed them. And the idea when Shinji Mikami left the studio, because he left Tango Gameworks, which is really, I think, the reason why Microsoft closed them,
Yeah, because
because
they
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 really
bought it and
just
he was
wanted Shinji
there.
Mikami.
Yeah.
um, anyway, so I think Shinji Mikami left, and the idea was John was gonna basically take over. But Krafton has now
Yeah, that's true.
purchased Tango Gameworks,
Oh,
and they rehired something like 50 staffers from Tango,
okay. So it
including
wasn't the
John
whole.
Johannes.
Was it? It wasn't the whole studio, probably. I'm
I don't
assuming.
think it was everybody. I
I'm
don't think it
curious.
was everybody. I'm sure that many of them probably already have other jobs by now.
Well, I'm curious if Shinji got some of them to come over to his for his new stuff.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah. Uh,
He has a tendency to do that. If you look at the people he works with, a lot
yeah.
of the people he worked with at Tango, he worked with at Capcom. Um, it's very common, you know.
Well,
He
yeah.
he
It's
uses his connections. He knows who he likes to work with.
yeah. It's like it's what we've talked about that we'll probably talk about on another podcast about how game studios like the teams that make certain games are like bands and stuff, and so when they're together, they're able to make certain types of games, or it's able to like gel a lot easier.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, I think that's something like yeah, Shinji. It seems like with him and something like Kojima, like he took people from his old team to join his studio as well. So it's not uncommon at all. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, interesting that Krafton of all places, of all,
Yeah.
um,
So I was not really super familiar with Krafton, so I looked it up
yeah,
after reading the story. PUBG.
yep. That's why I was like,
That's their
Yeah,
big one, right? Is
that
PUBG.
is their big. Yeah, they acquire or were they formed for? I can't remember if they acquired it. Did they acquire PUBG?
They probably
Um,
acquired it. They're
I
really a
think.
holding company, is what they are.
Yeah, I feel like they have a lot of, let's see, a lot of mobile. Well, they have
Hmm.
PUBG Mobile. They have a few other ones, lots of versions of PUBG Mobile, I guess. So yeah, it's interesting. They have Terra. Wow, that's an old one. That's an old MMO. I don't know if you ever knew that one.
Oh yeah, yeah, I did see Terra was on there. The other
Terra was
one
on there.
is they own the developer of Callisto Protocol.
Really?
Yes,
Oh, that is right. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was something.
which
Yeah.
doesn't exactly bode well.
No. No, I
Not
don't.
that Krafton isn't developing anything, right? They're a holding company.
Yeah.
The question is, are they going to give Tango the support they need to put out good stuff?
Yeah.
As it stands right now, they did not acquire all of the IPs of Tango. They acquired the
Yeah, I was gonna
staff
ask if you knew.
and
So
they acquired HiFi
was it
Rush.
just HiFi Rush? None of the other.
Just
So
HiFi Rush. They didn't acquire any of the other
oh wow.
IPs.
So Evil Within still with Microsoft.
Yep, Microsoft
And then
still owns that.
Ghostwire. That's the other one I was
Yes,
trying to think about.
Ghostwire
Ghostwire
also.
Tokyo.
Which, okay.
Huh?
Are they
Have
ever
you played
gonna
it?
make a Ghostwire 2? My
There
understanding
were.
is most people didn't really like Ghostwire 1. Like, it sold
Oh, what?
relatively okay, I think, but
It sold. I think it was the sales were pretty soft. But I heard a lot of good things. Like it was very unique for what it was. Um,
so I own it.
yeah. Have you
Yeah,
played
I
it?
own it. I haven't played it. It's on my backlog.
I was gonna say it's on my backlog too.
Uh,
I have it digitally and I even bought a physical copy.
yeah,
But yeah, it looks interesting. I mean, I think the first person
it had some
magic
development issues for
it
sure.
did, yeah. But I
So the
think it
director, the artistic director, she had some health issues like during development, had to leave,
mhm.
and so then they had to hire somebody else, and
Oh.
yeah, it's some of that
Well,
to me shows like there's some
yeah,
confused elements. So I did start playing it.
yeah.
Um, there's some rough edges for sure.
Well, I'll probably give it a try someday just to
Sure.
check it out because it looked you that's the thing. It looked very
The art
unique.
style looks amazing.
Yeah, and just the
I love the
gameplay. I
art style.
mean, the art style and the gameplay together, I'm like,
Yeah.
you're like fighting ghosts in Tokyo, and you're using like
Yeah.
magic like hand signs. So
Yep.
it's just yeah. So well, yeah,
Um,
it's interesting.
so
So they
yeah,
only
it's
acquired Hi-Fi Rush, which
they acquired HiFi
that's
Rush, and I
interesting.
think it is confirmed now that HiFi Rush 2 is going to happen.
I would hope that if they went out of their way to
Well, yeah,
acquire
if
a
they
shuttered
paid for it.
studio, yeah, that
They paid
they
for
would
that
use the
IP
IP.
specifically.
Uh, which I am all for more third person rhythm action games with humor I thought the game was pretty funny. Like I know some people
Oh,
didn't like the
yeah.
meta commentary and because it came out was it last year and there was a big
Well, that's the
not
thing about humor,
controversy.
right? Is that it's not for everybody. If it
Exactly, but
is
people
for
were
everybody, then
mad.
it's not funny.
Yeah, well, people were mad that Hi-Fi Rush had very like meta fourth wall breaking commentary, like from the main character from Chai, and
Well,
it came out right after Forspoken, where the character in that was very
oh, yeah.
talky
Well,
and
come on.
yeah,
Let's try and compare the writing in those two games.
exactly, and that was the thing. So there were people were mad because like, oh well, none of you were okay with the protagonist in Forspoken saying similar stuff. I'm like, the thing was,
He
there's a
wasn't.
big
She
part.
wasn't saying similar stuff, though. Just because it was meta doesn't mean it was. Yeah.
Yeah, people like to make broad comparisons, but like Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the delivery and how like the delivery was everything. And HiFi Rush knew how to
Mhm.
deliver it, and it was in a comic booky, cell shaded, like super
Yes.
colorful world where it's just like goofy and like it just. I guess it
It
gave me
belonged
vibes.
there.
Yeah, it's like the humor that's in Sunset Overdrive that Insomniac made. It was very similar to that, honestly. Like
All
that,
right.
I think that's probably the closest game that I've ever played that had similar humor, similar like kind of setup with the world and things like that. Which, but yeah, I mean, I'm happy that they acquired. I'm happy Krafton saved Tango. I hope that. I mean, I wish them all the best. I hope that they're able to develop a good sequel that isn't,
Yeah, absolutely.
change. I hope Krafton doesn't like make them make it something else, like
Something
something that's
else
not.
like live service. A little bit.
Uh, that would be sad.
Yes. I
Uh,
would probably. I don't know. I don't know if I could bring myself to buy that. That would just
yeah, if
not fit at all.
yeah, I don't think I could either.
Yep. So good for them. Good for them. I'm glad that they found some place, and that they were able to save that IP from being in the IP graveyard.
Yeah, and just that they were able to help the development team. I mean, that's two
Oh, well,
stories
yeah,
is
that's
like
well, and
yeah,
it's not even like a lot of those people would have found other jobs, right?
yeah, they would have, but
They would have. But it's nice that they're going to get to continue to work together when they clearly already have that rapport, right?
mhm,
Um, we've talked about this before, but people always talk about studios, right? Oh, this studio
mhm.
is so well known for making these quality games.
Yeah,
And to me, it's not the studio, it's the people behind the studio. And so a
yeah,
lot of times we lose sight of the fact that these studios change over time, especially when they're acquired by
yes,
large companies like Microsoft,
yeah.
right? Because a lot of the people who are making those great games, once that acquisition happens, they're like, well, I don't want to work for Microsoft. I don't want to have to do the things that they want us to do. So they
Yeah,
leave.
they don't want to be beholden to the corporate overlords
Yeah,
essentially. So,
exactly.
and in the end, like if you think about it, like a lot of game developers, I mean they're artists. Like they're all
Yes.
it's a team of artists. It's people that have come up with the story, with the graphical design, the music, like all these components that make a video game, a modern
Yeah.
video game. And they have these ideas that sometimes don't gel with what you know their owners want, and so
hmm
yeah, I know it would be hard to stay under some of that, and so
Yeah, well, and the other thing that happens, right, and I see this happen all the time, is that creatives, they want to create.
hmm
They want to be able to explore new ideas and do different things, right? But when you have a successful idea in this industry, you're rewarded by being told, do more of that.
yeah, exactly. It's just okay that
We don't
made
want you to
money. Let's do it
continue to
again.
create. We want you to just keep making what you made until people stop buying it.
Yeah, and I feel like we've been there in that state for a long time now. Unfortunately, we don't have as nearly as much. I don't know, just unique games that I feel like we had back in the what was it, the sixth generations like PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and then even into the PS3, 360 era, there were still a lot of um, games that definitely wouldn't be made nowadays. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah.
for sake of keeping this episode short, we wanted to talk about the games that we've been playing, but we're going to do it kind of fast. So maybe keep it to, I mean, we'll talk about no more than two each, and we won't dwell on any game for too long.
Yeah.
So, a couple games I've been playing recently are Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom, and I just started Pacific Drive. So,
Mm.
Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom. It is a trip. If you guys haven't seen it before, it is one of the most visually crazy things that you. It's just like so random. It's so random. A lot of humor. So there's a lot of humor. I'll just give an example, and avoid spoilers or anything like that. But for instance, there is a pizza level, and in the pizza level, I'll say this: the game is basically like if you take Super Mario 64 and mix it with Crazy Taxi, and then also add in kind of its own special spice and make it its own thing. That's what this game is. It's a
Nice. Is it
3D
a
platformer where
okay?
you play as
Yeah,
a
I was gonna ask.
car. You can go forwards, you can go backwards, and you can do like a dash, which if you interrupt the dash, you can do like a little hop, and you can do that twice. So basically, you have a double jump, which is funny because they advertise it as having no jump button, which is, I guess, technically correct because you use the dash button to jump, but it's a little misleading. Anyway,
That sounds interesting.
because of the nature of it, you're a car, you control it like a car, so the movement is totally different than any other 3D platformer. And the fact that, like, when you enter an area, you have some of the areas you have limited time. Um, and so you have to take these passengers to their locations to get more time in the area to collect gears, which are basically like the power stars from Super Mario 64. You collect enough, you can go to another level, right? And then
Yeah.
the humor is just so funny. Like in one of the levels, you'll like pick up these passengers that are slices of pizza, and they need to go to a job interview at a pizza place, and they're like talking like they don't know what the job actually entails.
Oh man.
It's really funny. So it's humor like that is just it's so good. Highly
Yeah.
recommend it. It's not expensive. Like it's an indie game. But
Yeah. But
totally worth the time. Totally worth the money.
yeah, I'll have to check that one out. That seems like one of those really unique games that is there's not much like it out in the market right now. So
Oh yeah, I mean I don't know of anything. I've never played anything like it before. And that's, I am a big indie lover. I love indie games because they're not afraid to explore new things, and they also don't feel the need to be excessively long,
yeah.
right? It's you get the experience. It's usually pretty well tailored to be a certain thing, and then you finish and you can move on to something else.
Yeah. There's you can experience a lot more different types of games. And yeah, it doesn't have to just be a time sink like most AAA
Yep.
games nowadays. So that's awesome.
How about you?
One of the ones I've tried more recently, I actually is a beta for a game called Tribe 9.
Tribe 9.
It's yeah, it's very interesting. It's by the makers or the studio that's behind Danganronpa. Um,
Mm,
very
I
weird,
don't actually know what that is, but
very weird Japanese kind of visual novel RPG games.
okay,
Um,
okay.
so Tribe 9, I believe it's based on an anime. I wasn't aware of this until I was like digging around, but I think it's based on an actual anime or manga. Not sure which one. I didn't really dive too much, but I got into the playtest for it, and so it starts out kind of like a classic 2D RPG, like old school. Like you start playing it, it looks like an old school RPG. But as you get through it, you progress, and it becomes kind of more 2.5D, similar to like Octopath Traveler a little bit graphically speaking. So you're playing as like a little 2D character sprite. Interesting thing is that when you get into battles, it's not turn based. It's actually action RPG. So when you get into a battle, it goes into full third person camera like battles where you're like the characters transform into like more realized anime style characters. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's like a three-party team, or or a party of three. It is who you get to fight with. Like you play as the main character, and he has two support characters. And it's competent. I wouldn't say that it's the best third-person fighting that I've seen, but it has a cool chain mechanic where you build up, like kind of in fighting games, like in the newer Street Fighters and some of the other ones that like as you get hits or the enemies get hits on you, you build up a meter, and once you hit a certain tier, you can start triggering special attacks for your character and your party members. And so, if you trigger the attacks in consecutive order, so like you trigger your main character, then if in the timing window you hit one of your secondaries, and then after he finishes his attack, you trigger the third one. It does like a special combo where it ends with you being able to do kind of more damage towards the enemies. So it's it's pretty fun. It's not as tight as I think it could be. That would make it more fun. But beyond that, so it's like it's 2D exploring this world. That's all kind of old school looking, but kind of not. Then you get into like third person, like anime character combat. But on
Mm.
top of that, I mean I got sucked in for several hours the other night, and it is a test, so I don't know exactly what the balance between everything is because I didn't finish. Like I
Sure.
after
Yeah.
the main
Yeah.
fighting, like it was pretty long. There's lots of the cutscenes and stuff are pretty long winded because a lot of anime ones are, which I don't mind all the time. But it ended with a extreme baseball game where a larger party of characters were on my baseball team, and you were fighting one of the main villains through emotional baseball. So you were, he would say stuff to you, and to supercharge your attack, you had to pick the right responses that would hit the emotion, like would trigger the emotions to give you
Oh dear.
enough boost. And it was like on this like grid where you have to like move the cursor and find like which one you want to hit, and then hopefully you'd hit it where people could, you'd hit it far enough that they could run the bases and get around and try to score on him. And it was pretty wild. Like I was like, what is this game? Like after I played it for like a couple hours, like what is this game? Like it was very unique. Like that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
it,
Okay. So it's funny that both of us brought up games that are kind of a little random.
yeah, it was just like all over the place. And not to say like
Yeah.
I tried playing one of the old, I think the original Danganronpa, and it is a weird game. Like, and I get that the people that made that made this because it is. There's lots of talk about life and death and
That's
just so
interesting.
much like commentary on the
So this. Okay.
grind
Wait. Wait.
of
Wait.
life.
So this is an
Yeah,
RPG, right?
yeah, yeah.
Would you say it has any kind of inspiration from like Earthbound?
Not really. I think like I said, it's supposedly from like an actual, like the story's based on like an anime thing, but like the way
Mm.
it plays is just, it's like so, like an amalgamation of like so many different things that it sounds
Mm.
like that, like I was, like I saw a few screenshots, I'm like, what is this? And then I played it and I'm like, what is this? Which
That's
it, not to say it's
that's
bad or anything.
interesting.
I'm
That's
interested. So
interesting.
like
I'll have
I'm,
to look into that one.
yeah, the
It
test.
sounds bizarre.
Yeah, I think it's a closed beta, so like it ends tomorrow. So I don't know if I'll play anymore. Like
Yeah.
I put in like a couple hours, and I'm very interested to see
Decent
what
amount of
it'll
time
be.
for a beta.
the The one thing I'm very nervous about is that they said it's going to be a live service game, which I'm still trying to figure out. Like I think I understand where they're going to do the live service stuff, and it's like almost like I think they're going to make it kind of an mini MMO that was similar to, I'm trying to think. There was a couple games I played way back, like more than a decade ago, that were kind of MMOs, but not. Um, and I don't know, like that piece kind of scares me. Like, okay, well, this is cool, but I don't know if I'll play it if it's gonna be some sort of another gotcha or something like that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yep.
All right.
So
Well,
yeah,
cool.
that's the main one. So yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Feel like we had a really good episode. Um, like we said before, please like and comment. Subscribe if you want to see responses to those comments, and we'll catch you on the next one.
All right. Peace out.